Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin. Alan Ruff and Alison McConnell are here with me. Delighted to have your company. Don't forget, if you can like our programme and hit the subscribe button, we'd be absolutely delighted to have you as part of the football family. You can interact with fellow viewers and you can put a point to all of us here on the panel. We'd love to hear from you. And if you hit the subscribe button, then you'll be able to find out exactly when our unique video content comes up, and the app itself, you can download the app and get all the breaking football news. So that's all to look forward to. Here's the quiz for today, and with Celtic Rangers in mind. Who was the last player to be sent off in an Old Firm game? And I can see by the stare, Alison's got a thought in her head. Ruffy, completely blank.
Am I right in thinking that there's not been a player sent off since Ange Postecoglou took over at Celtic?
Yes. So it's one player. Don't give me his name, but there is one player that we will give you the answer to that at the end of the programme. As far as the competition is concerned, it's ongoing. It's a good one. It's another magnificent competition courtesy of PLZ Soccer. This is your chance to win this fantastic framed and signed print of Brian Laudrup scoring for Rangers in that unforgettable game up at Tannadice. That goal secured Rangers 9 in a row, and for your chance to win, all you have to do is make sure you subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel and answer this simple question: from which club did Rangers sign Brian Laudrup? If you know the answer, pop it in the comments section below and make sure you subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. Good luck. Yeah, it's cracker. Brian Laudrup signed frame print as well. Put it in a frame because Ruffy just keeps busting my head, so he can deliver it. Let's hope somebody in Ben Becula wins it and Ruffy can deliver it with the frame. Let's see how smart he is. Shane Johnson, hi. Nicky Twig, Gallant, of course, Ian, Tommy Adams as well. It's 10 o'clock in Thailand, says Tommy. Hi to Earl, Bob as well. It's always good for everyone to say hello on the programme. We've got so many people. And of course, if you want to put your point across on Celtic Rangers or indeed Hearts Forum, what's going to happen at the bottom end, if you're a Dundee United, Ross County or a Kilmarnock fan, give us your thoughts, because there's a weekend of rip-snorting football to look forward to. Thanks to William Smith, who says, afternoon Peter, Ruffy and our lovely Alison. So there you are. It's good to get your cousins obviously on the feed. The lovely Alison and the mediocre Peter and Ruffy. Also, if you want to give us your prediction on the weekend's football, we'll certainly be reading it out. Before we get to the games over the weekend, I can tell you we'll hear from David Martindale, Stuart Kettlewell, Robbie Neilson, Callum McGregor will be on today's show as well, and our reporters have been out there at all those press conferences. And let's not forget, as well as the football show, you can still watch David Martindale, My Story, our documentary, and Alex McLeish talking about Michael Beale and all things Rangers. And we've got a special with Alex McLeish on all things Gothenburg coming up as well. So, the fallout from Andy Walker being a whistleblower certainly has caused a fair bit of consternation ahead of the big game Celtic Rangers, because some people will speculate that he was maybe talking about a game that involves Celtic and Rangers, although Andy was quick to point out he's not going to name names or the game, that he heard basically, I think from Andy's point of view, referees trying to concoct an easy way out over a VAR decision. And I think the line that he said was the easiest way out would be if it's offside during a Premiership game. And I don't think he thought that was the proper language to use on that. The fallout from it, as I mentioned yesterday, and some people on here absolutely tried to batter me for it, Ruffy, but it's not just simply about him being a whistleblower, which is a very pertinent point and a serious issue that I think everybody could deal with. There are other subplots to this. Relationship between Sky and the SFA, relationships between the referees who may well feel as if their exclusivity of working on VAR and helping out the broadcaster by letting them have access to their conversations around it and why they're reaching a decision, they may well feel compromised in the security of what they're saying. So there's that many subplots to this one.
Yeah, you're right. Every one of these people would be extremely annoyed. I'm sure there would be contact late afternoon, you know, about everything that you've just said there the now, and I'm sure somebody will come out with some kind of statement at some time, but it's not something I would think the referees in particular, who are getting a pretty hairy time with this VAR, you know, they're the ones that are copping for it all the time. I don't think it's something they would have want to get out, but I see Maxey was quick to say that maybe he picked up on referees' jargon, you know, that they were talking to each other, you know, he's picked up maybe the flavour of what they were trying to say to each other, and it doesn't look bad. So yeah. I'm sure the referees will come out with something, and Maxey will come out with something. But you're right, you know, a lot of things have to be said and covered up because there'll be contracts that have been signed.
Yeah, well, there's 2 or 3 things that have come from the fallout of it. Obviously, Ruffy's, what he's saying is that Andy Walker may well have misinterpreted the dialogue between the referees, which, again, we can all have our own interpretation of it, but you know, Andy's drive on this is that that's not dialogue that should be used to try and get you off with one major decision, hoping that another one comes before it so that you don't have to make that big call. That's the first issue we deal with, which is a serious one. It's the last thing you want is a situation where the VAR officials are there to help the referee, but they can't help him because they're scared to make a call. Yeah,
I think that's absolutely right, and I think Andy's point in that is right, that's very disappointing language to hear when it comes to using the technology to get the most accurate decision possible. Now, I think there are a number of issues that it raises. You've touched on them yourself, but for me, I think when VAR was introduced, I always thought it would be pertinent to have those conversations transparent and public. I think it creates a trust in the system. You have seen all manner of discussion since it was implemented back in November. You have seen some very dubious calls. I think sometimes it would be helpful to hear the conversation that is going on where a referee comes to the conclusion that he does, because there have been points, you and I, we could all sit here and name 5 or 6 off the top of our heads where you think everyone round about you would have taken a different call from what the referee did, and the one that handball has repeatedly been a difficult area. So I think transparency would be the way to go with it. If Andy Walker has raised this issue about the conversation and taking the easiest way out, I think it has to be addressed. I think it's a conversation, and I think it would be disappointing too if it were to be fudged with something like, oh, you've misunderstood the jargon between the referees. Give us peace. Yeah. I mean, come on, Andy Walker played football for how many years? He's been a pundit for how many years? He's not misunderstanding any jargon.
And of course, he's got his co-commentator. He's got the commentator and Ian Crocker behind him, who's also hearing that. So they're privy to the conversation. So there will be corroboration that that's what was said. That said, there is another issue. And the other issue is that, you know, from the Daily Record this morning, there's a suggestion that Ian Maxwell, the SFA chief executive, may well want to speak to Sky because their access to that VAR dialogue may well be in question now, because this was a kind of situation that was put in place to enhance and help the broadcaster relay to everyone that there was a situation where VAR was looking at an issue, and this is why the game was being held up. So they were relaying it. The other issues to deal with here is maybe there's a breakdown in trust. That's the first thing, because you've put something in place to enhance the broadcaster, this kind of communication, and of course understanding that this may well have been a private situation where that trust should not have been broken by relaying what they're saying. You're saying yes, it should be a good thing in the future, but it's not in place now. So is there an element of broken trust between broadcaster and organisation? And then the third caveat to this is quite simply that referees will feel, well, wait a minute, this is again our members being exposed, and even more pressure. We all know that referees have been criticised heavily because they're not up to a certain standard, but there's 3 elements to that story, Alison.
I agree with you. First of all, what I would say is I think the optics don't look good. If Sky and if the SFA then say to Sky, we're now denying that access because you caught us out in something, or because something that was untoward came to light, I don't think the optics of that look good at all. I think we need some honest dialogue about it. I think VAR has raised as many questions and as many problems in games since before its implementation. I think there are real difficult calls at times for referees to come to. I have some sympathy for them for the pressure that they have been under. On the other hand, is it a breaking of trust? I think you could argue both, couldn't you? Yeah, if you, whatever side you're on here, you're going to say you're privy to a private conversation. If you go on and you make that public, then we're going to be sore. From Andy Walker's perspective, his argument, I'm sure, would be to say, well, I'm bringing something into the light that is for the good of everyone here, to show the kind of conversations that are going on behind the scenes. Yeah,
it's a hot topic, and everybody's got their say on it. But as far as the VAR, and it's not just about, we don't know which games that are involved in it, so obviously Andy's not divulged that information. Had he divulged that information, all hell would let loose right now ahead of this game coming up.
Exactly. If we were sitting here on Monday and we hear that kind of story that the referee went upstairs and said, is that a penalty? And we went, no, don't get a penalty, it'll be a riot, just give something else. If we were in that scenario, then we'd be in right trouble. So hopefully we're talking about the football on Monday and not VAR.
Yeah, thank you to so many of you who are offering your opinion on this one. Of course, a lot of people are saying, Bob's saying, does the trust extend to the club TV or only Sky or professional bodies? Well, it was only Sky, because as the major broadcaster of the SPFL, especially the Scottish Premiership matches, and one which obviously Andy Walker has spoken about but not revealed the teams involved, then I think some harsh words will be spoken. Whether they're right to be spoken, I think you raise a great point, Alison. Yes, whistleblowers sometimes can be ridiculed for obviously relaying something that people don't want you to know. But there's a value in what he has said. It needs to be addressed. Answers need to be forthcoming, and hopefully that resolution moves us forward to try and avoid the situation. I think Andy's got a perfectly valid point there, but as far as the other issues, we're not privy to. I would love to be a fly in the wall when they all sit down. I have to say, I have been involved in something similar to that when I worked for Sky. An element of trust where the SPFL gave a little ground on something, and we were allowed to enhance our broadcasting at the time. And then it blew up in our face. I don't want to go back over it, but nevertheless, dealing with this issue here is, for me, it was a bit of deja vu. Here it comes.
I think fundamental to anything and to any relationship is trust, and the trust that I would reference just now is the trust that football fans need to have in the system, in the officials, and how games are refereed and how decisions are reached. It's not so long ago you had an incident, and go back a decade, you had Neil Lennon at Tannadice, a well-documented incident. I think it undermines the trust in officials, whether you could argue about it all day, but I think you have to have a trust in on the honesty of officials as they go about doing the job to the best of their ability. We would all accept it's a very, very difficult job. I think it's far harder than it looks. So many great things. Like, you look at it, it looks fairly straightforward. It's a tremendously difficult job. It carries a lot of pressure. But I think you have to have, fundamentally, you have to have that trust.
Yeah, I don't want to get into any kind of religious outlook on this, Ruffy. But if I die, I don't want to come back as a referee. I just thought I'd throw that in. It could be a punishment, wouldn't it?
I did it once in a very risky place. I did a charity. It was a charity to raise money for Berlin prison. And the prisoners themselves all funded a large amount of money for a football game, and I was to referee it. And there was hard-end prisoners in this game, and I had to give a penalty.
Yeah, to the prisoners.
To one side of the prisoners, and one of the guys just looked at me and went, "Really?" And I went, "No, maybe we'll just."
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's opened up a can of worms, but we shall see how it resolves itself. Certainly, I think if we do get to a situation, I'm not sure we will, about possibly the referees having the same exposure as the rugby officials, where they basically have to relay it to us.
I think that is a sensible way to go. I think it's the only way to go.
Yeah, it might be the only way to go, but you know, I often look at it and say to myself, what is it with football? Are we persecuted because they believe the common man and the common man's football game, we can't behave ourselves, we can't get drink the same way they can down south? There's one element of it. You can at the rugby, and of course the rugby, they seem to be able to accept, you know, certain decisions because the referee has that control, has that respect. What is it with us? there's a hey, wait a minute, wait to put the nettles over this.
I have to be honest and say, there are times you are at football games and you think there's a reason why alcohol isn't allowed.
Yeah.
There have been games where you think behaviour is poor and has been poor. I think some of the content of singing post-COVID has been deplorable.
Yeah.
And I would reference both Rangers and Celtic in that, bringing back songs that you've not heard for 20, 30 years. So I think, but to answer the question about referees and similar to rugby, I think that transparency lends itself to a trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I just thought I'd throw down that class argument there as well, Alison, just to see if you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I think there is definitely an element. You even see it in very basic levels, how crowds are taken in and out of stadia, how they're policed, how they're spoken to. If you ever go to a game as a fan and not in a working environment, I think there are times where it can be quite revelatory.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. I love the way you're choosing your words today. You're speaking a little bit slower today, Alison. Listen, here's the fixtures for the weekend and lots to look forward to. Celtic against Rangers, obviously the early kick-off on the Saturday. It's Aberdeen against Kilmarnock, Hearts, St Mirren, Motherwell against Livingston, St Johnstone, Ross County, and Dundee United against Hibernian on the Sunday. Don't forget, you can join us on Saturday at 4 o'clock. There'll be a preview with Ruffy and Tam and Kerry on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock this Saturday, as ever, our results show. Some results shows have fallen by the wayside, but just as we are really gathering momentum, Ruffy, Adam Binney will be here in the chair alongside Ruffy and Tam. What a baptism of fire. What a baptism of fire. It's the only flight I could get out, so I thought I'm off to you.
Well, at least it's a 12 o'clock kick-off, so he's got a wee while to get his head around it before it's 4 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely, because we give you the half times, the full times, and of course managers and players' reaction to the big game Celtic Rangers and right across the Scottish Premiership. I really do hope you can join us for it. Interestingly enough, Callum McGregor was speaking today, and the Celtic captain highlighted the fact that yes, great to win games, but it's sometimes learning more from the ones that you didn't win against Rangers.
Those are the ones that stay with you the longest, and you know, I spoke about this a few times, but when these fixtures come around, then you know you very rarely get a second chance to put the ones that you lose, you put them right. So it's important that when they come around, then you give everything that you possibly can, individually and collectively, to make sure it's a positive experience.
Yeah, interesting. You learn more in defeat, Ruffy.
Yeah, I think if you're a Rangers or Celtic player, and you're brought up in that environment of what these games are all about. I know it's not true that the guys who don't come from Glasgow or Scotland hurt anymore. You don't like getting beat with your rivals, but I think for the people like Callum McGregor, who know what it's all about, who live day to day in this country, and the pressures that come with playing with Rangers and Celtic, out with losing a football game, must be horrendous to deal with, because I mean, footballers get used to losing games, but in that magnitude I think it'd be really hard to deal with.
Yeah, the other thing about it, over the 30 odd years that I've been working in journalism, Alison, the amount of Celtic and Rangers players that I've interviewed who have said, if you lose it, it's painful, it just sticks with you. The defeats are harder to deal with, because you're going in, you're going home, you're analysing, you're certainly not going out. Yeah,
I think a defeat probably makes more of an impact than a win. I think if there's a win, there's probably relief rather than anything else. That you can continue as you were, you can go on as you were. I don't know that there's even much of an opportunity to savour and enjoy it until you get to the end of a campaign, possibly the end of a career for some people. Whereas I think a defeat is more marked. I think, like you, I don't think people are going out socialising. I think Glasgow is a city that lays claim to its footballers, maybe in ways that other cities don't. I think you'd probably want to keep a low profile. I think you incur the wrath of your own support as much as anything else when you don't win these games. There are always questions to be asked, and I think there's a forensic analysis from everyone when you're on the losing side in a derby like Celtic and Rangers. I think you go through team selection, you go through tactical formations, you go through choices, individual choices within game, managerial choices within games. I think there is no stone left unturned, and I think for players, especially nowadays, it would be very, very difficult to escape it given the scope of social media and everything round about it. I think it probably leaves quite a significant impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you lose the game, Ruffy, the only way that you could possibly go out with your family is if you had your own private jet and then you just fired off to Spain or something, because the amount of times I used to sit next to DJ and he would say to us, going out, not a chance. You're actually painful, just if you lose the game.
Well, I know how painful it is just playing for an ordinary team. You don't go out at the weekend, it takes you maybe 3 or 4 days to get over it, but I can't imagine what it like be if you're a Rangers or a Celtic supporter. It's amazing how things have changed, and you'll know yourself, most Rangers and Celtic players socialise in the town after games. They go into a recognised bar and have a drink together. That never happened now. Never.
I think
it just shows you how things have moved on.
Can I just say to you, I think it would happen, but I think there are certain places where they go where they know there's a trust.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean? Because there are lots of Celtic and Rangers players that I know that are still pals. Scott Brown was pals with Stephen Whittaker forever and a day.
Thompson.
Yeah, and I don't think football rivalry. Not everybody's wired the same way.
I know.
I think it's because they knew each other for Hibs had a long time.
I thought something that was really interesting was hearing Ange Postecoglou say, now he had a tremendously successful season last year, but talking about he had family and friends over from Australia after the semi-final last year, and he didn't go out for dinner. He didn't turn up to meet his wife and friends for dinner because they'd lost the game, and he said he couldn't face it, and he was saying on reflection it seems quite immature, but he said I just didn't have the stomach to go out and socialise straight after the game. And that's someone in the midst that would be the only blot on a very successful campaign. So you think there's your indication of what it does and what it leaves.
Yeah, okay. I'm just looking here, and here's an interesting one. I don't want to box myself in on this, Ali, but it certainly would be something I think that would be really good for us to do as maybe another one of our mini documentaries, Ruffy. Let me see, by the look on both your faces, if this is worthy of some traction, okay? This is Martin Conlon, who says, "Hi Peter, I would love for you and Tam McManus to do the referee course and then referee a hard amateur match. That would be fun."
Honestly, as I said, I've done it. It's impossible. It's impossible to get the right decision right because you only get to see it once. Yeah. It is. I mean, he's quite right and very good. I mean, we do all these things before the season starts with meetings with managers and that. It'd be interesting if a couple of players put themselves above it to go and referee a boys' game. No, I'm not saying anything that's going to get them into trouble, but just get an idea of what it's like to be in there and having to make a decision and make a decision right away. It'd be interesting how they get on, not just for the public to know. This is how hard it is.
I think the other thing about it, which I would find I would really find very difficult in that situation, is, the first major decision when the striker comes up to you and goes, "Oh, and I'm like, who are you talking to?"
I think what must be very difficult.
So Rangers game.
Oh no! I think it was Stuart Diggle turned around. Somebody says to him, "Why don't you take a flight?" And he says, "No, why don't you?" And by the way, even Stuart got in trouble for that. It was just a nonsense.
It's normal. But I think what would be very difficult, I think now you see it with players, and the advice you give to players if they make a mistake, you've got to move on, you put it out of your mind as quickly as possible. As if a referee makes a mistake early in a game, I do wonder what impact that has. Are you going over it still? Are you still thinking about it?
I must ask a referee about that. Your heart must be going that little. It must,
especially if you know. I think if you think, I've called that wrong, I think I've got that one wrong, I think it must affect your concentration on the remainder of the game. I also think too, for the likes of Celtic Park on Saturday, I think Michael Beale had a point. I think, when you have a massive crowd, all home based, I think there's no question it influences the referee.
And that could go against you as well, because the referee could say, well, there's a massive row there, so I'm not going to get. I'm not going to be influenced. He could be saying, Well, I don't think it was, but that crowd's no influenced me in my decision that I'm making. So I think it can go both ways. Probably more the way you're suggesting, 60,000. But I mean, the referees will tell you, if you speak to any of the referees we meet, they will say we're not influenced by anything. I see it, I give it as I see it. I mean, that's them saying it. I've never heard one saying, I've been influenced by anything.
Yeah, well, listen, it just shows you the pressure the players are under going into every game. It doesn't matter what level, what top, middle, bottom in this Scottish Premiership it is. Believe me, cutthroat at the best of times. And Connor Goldson mentioned that he hasn't even enjoyed some of the victories, such as the pressure to try and close that gap. This is what he had to say. I think we haven't pressed on. And that's everything as a club. As a club, we could have done more, and now we're back to square one. I get the whole frustration of the fans, excuse me, that we haven't kicked on after 55 and gone and won 56 and 57. Someone spoke to me about the amount I have won, and if I play a certain amount of games after 8 years, do I think I will be classed as a legend? I haven't won enough. That's a fairly honest assessment from Connor Goldson.
Yeah, I think it is. I think the supporters themselves, once Rangers won the league, they expected, a big change, better signings, better competition with Celtic, stopping Celtic getting to cup finals, stopping them winning trophies. Yeah, I think as a captain, you take these things maybe a wee bit harder to take than the normal players, because you are the captain of a major football team, and I think they take the most of the burden. But they're the only ones that can stop it, and these ideal games coming up to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. DPG says, Peter, you need a hot whiskey, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Eventually, Ruffy, after him.
Well, I didn't want to stop you in full flow.
Hey, can you believe him, by the way, after the event? Unbelievable, Alison. That's what you're dealing with. What about, as I hold this, and there are other waters available, what about the money that's been revealed from the European campaigns? UEFA revealed that Celtic earned 9.2 million from their European campaign. They were eliminated from all three competitions in this season, but Rangers earned 18.1 million from the run to the Europa League final. So it just shows you, further you get, the bigger the money, the prize. Points mean money as well. Yeah,
I think it's when you consider the league that Celtic and Rangers operate and the financial rewards that come even from being very successful, you can see how crucial a European run can be just to bolstering finances, significantly bolstering finances. You would say that would have been a relatively poor season from Celtic in a European context, yet that money would be invaluable for Rangers, obviously, reaping double that for the run that took them to the Europa League final. I think it's definitely an avenue where you think success can be so important, and obviously this season there's Champions League money now that comes into the mix for both clubs, and it's all about reinvesting that and recycling it and using it to your strengths, I think, but you can see how vital it is in terms of sustaining the finances of the club.
I keep saying to Peter, it's not just Rangers and Celtic, it's 42
it feeds
clubs.
Down.
Yeah.
Every club gets a hand out. I don't know how the scale works, but I remember when I was at Partick Thistle, there was a fee get dropped into our box, and it was astounding. The amount of money, he hadn't done anything about it. It was up to Rangers and Celtic who'd done it all. So I would think that fed down to all the clubs, and it was a large sum of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Just shows you there's a lot of money to be made when you get that. An automatic qualification for the Champions League group stages is just absolutely massive as well. So interesting to see how that all pans out, and who gets into the group stages. It's so crucial for next season, especially when clubs reveal their financial figures, because then there's no argument. You can only look at it, digest it, discuss it, and you know exactly where they are financially as well. So, as well as Celtic against Rangers, give us your predictions. Thank you to so many of you who've obviously offered your prediction on how you think the game is going to go, and what significantly you think will be the tactics and of course the key players in the game. So William Smith's got a good point. You don't want Ruffy to give you the kiss of life, Peter. You're absolutely right. I'd probably just lie. Just lie here and not ask for anything.
Did it once after a night out, but never again.
Yeah, absolutely. So So thank you for that, and thanks to everyone who's given us their opinion on how you think the game is going to go as well. So many people talking about Celtic against Rangers. They'll kick off on Saturday. We'll have managers and players, and if you want to, on our PLZ Soccer YouTube channel right now and across our social media, we got Joe Miller and Charlie Adam together to chat to each other about the game coming up, Celtic against Rangers, how they feel it's going to go, the key players, memories of favourite games that they played in as well. An interesting chat between two Celtic players of the past. So we try and give you as much as possible. We'll hear from the captains and the managers ahead of this big one too. What about Hearts against St Mirren? Well, that's one of those matches where suddenly you're looking at St Mirren wanting to finish in the top 6. Hearts want to finish third. Our man Adam Binney was out there in the capital today.
Peter, I'm at the Oriam this afternoon to speak to Robbie Neilson ahead of Hearts' match against St Mirren in the Scottish Premiership at the weekend. But all the chat, all the discussion surrounding Hearts this weekend has been about the graffiti outside of Foundation Plaza at Tynecastle Stadium, with the text on that graffiti insinuating that some of the Hearts support do not want Robbie Neilson to be their manager. So naturally we had to get the reaction of the Hearts boss, who insists this is just a part of modern football.
It's disappointing that with obviously you get graffiti there and it's it's outside the football club, but ultimately it's football nowadays. You've got to take that to chin. If you're at a big football club, if you lose a couple of games in the bounce, then people will voice their opinion and you just got to accept it, got to move on, hope it doesn't happen again. The only way we can rectify it is by winning on Saturday.
There's no getting away from the fact that it's been a dismal run of form for Hearts as of late. I think that's 5 defeats in the last 6 matches, where once they had an 11-point advantage over Aberdeen, that's now just a singular point, and a defeat or even a draw at the weekend could see them give up that third position in the league that they seem to have had control and grip over for the entirety of the season. But manager Robbie Neilson is still confident that his players will finish in third come the end of the season.
I still think we'll finish third, and that's where we want to finish, and we're in third at the moment. We've got an opportunity on Saturday to hopefully extend that lead, and then more opportunities throughout the season to try and confirm it. And I think if you asked any team out with Rangers and Celtic what position they'd like to be in, they'd want to be in Hearts' position. We're sitting in third at the moment, and yes, we'd like to have a bigger gap, but ultimately we don't. But we've still got a small gap there. It's up to us to try and build on that.
If he's under pressure, the game's a bogey.
I think the reality is that he is under pressure. I think just the way results and performances have gone, I think third position for me looked a formality for Hearts just a few weeks ago. I think all of a sudden now I would back Aberdeen to go and take it. I think they're the team with a bit of momentum. They've got the wind at their back. They seem to be banking points. Hearts for me just look rudderless just now. They're not creating chances. I think there looks like a real lethargy within the team. I saw them on Saturday. I thought they were very disappointing. That was a third successive league defeat. I think they badly need a result at the weekend, but they're playing against one of the real surprise packages, I think, this season, and I think St Mirren are capable of causing them problems.
Yes, it's an interesting thing, and then of course you need an Edinburgh derby at Easter Road like a hole in the head, Ruffy, and then it's Ross County. I can't quite put my finger on it. I mean, obviously not having Craig Gordon there is a blow, but Xander Clark came in and he made some really good saves for them.
Yeah, I think there's other things you've got to take into consideration. Halkett's out. I think he was having a good season. Boyce has been out all season, puts the pressure on Shankland, although he's coming up with some goals and penalties, but you've not got the same strike force there now, so you're relying on certain individuals, but they have lost their way. But I've said on numerous occasions on the show, you can't play well all year. Hearts right up until 5 games ago were head and shoulders above everybody else. They were the third best team to watch. No, they were really good, but they went off the boil. And if you look at all the teams in the Premier League, they'll all went off the boil. They all went 5 games without a win. Unfortunately, Hearts are doing it at the crucial time, and unfortunately, as Ali's saying there's a segment of Hearts supporters don't like Robbie Neilson. And if he was to lose that third place or even the fourth place, that'll just get worse and worse. So they need to start winning games.
I think this has got to be the strangest period I've ever witnessed in Scottish football, and almost certainly in the English Premier League as well, for almost a kind of a lack of tolerance, understanding, not so much compassion, but just a kind of a grasp of the job and the bigger picture of not being a knee-jerk in a certain moment. Okay, he's lost 4 games on the bounce. I mean, 4 games of a defeat, 4 games consecutively losing down south, you're bulleted.
Yeah, I think there's very little grace. I think it's hard for any managers to establish significant credit in the bank. I think it's easily overlooked what you've already done, and when there is a poor run of form, and I think it's just the current reality. I think down south it's all about money and what it means if you have any precariousness over relegation and falling out of a league that's particularly lucrative. I think it makes chairmen very nervous. I'm not sure it is bad here, but at the same time there's always a significant turnover of staff, and I think supporters play a big part in that. I think once supporters turn and you see things like the graffiti on Monday, I think it becomes increasingly difficult to turn the tide of support if it's not going well. The only thing that dissipates it is results.
Yeah, absolutely. You live and die by them. But if I was to say to you all that, by the way, Dundee United would sack Jack Ross after 7 games, you'd be like, no, that can't happen. And then, of course, they're going to put in another novice, to take over the reins. You think, well, you're on a hiding to nothing doing that, and so it proved. Aberdeen, 2 managers didn't work out. Sean Maloney, Hibs, 19 games. I mean, the whole thing just becomes ridiculous.
Yeah, I think managers need time. I think if you want, especially if you look at Jack Ross, I think that one was particularly harsh. I think you need time to build an identity around your team. I think you need at least a couple of windows to bring in players that you have identified that fit your system. I think there has to be some grace, but the reality is that it doesn't last for any length of time.
Yep. If anything, even managers now are not getting an appointment on a long-term basis. As Aberdeen get the game against Kilmarnock, Kelly fighting for their lives to stay in the league. Aberdeen, Barry Robson just fighting for the right to become a longer term prospect as Don's boss.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. If he continues on this winning run and ends up third and they're in Europe and everything, again, it depends who the candidates are out there, but he's done nothing wrong so far, and if that's the end product, then the board have got a massive decision to make, because as you've just said there, the last 2 appointments have been poor, so they have to make the next one right, and the supporters will be really pressing them to make sure they get the next one right. So it just depends who else is out there of any calibre is interested in this job.
Yeah, Motherwell manager Stuart Kettlewell was talking today ahead of their match against Livingston. Our reporter Kerry Pollock was there. Oh, sorry, it wasn't Kerry, it was Adam, who looks like Kerry from the other end of the M8.
Motherwell take on Livingston here at Fir Park on Saturday, and what a run this side have been on ever since Stuart Kettlewell walked through these doors. 13 points from a possible 18, and the only defeat coming here against Rangers last month. They faced Livingston on Saturday with the hope of extending that run, and I'm speaking to a few fans who think if they do manage to win this one, that's then pretty much safe. But if you ask manager Stuart Kettlewell, he certainly doesn't think so.
No, I absolutely detest it as well. I do. This is where I go strong. At no point does a club like Motherwell ever have the deck chairs out and think that it's holiday time. I spoke about this 2 weeks ago when it was an international break about how it would be a working week for us, and it was. And I think we reap the benefits from that in a performance against Hibs. People come and pay their money to come and watch us on a weekly basis. You guys come in here and give up your time to come and listen to us and all the rest of it, pre and post match, that type of thing. So it's important that we act professional throughout, no matter what happens on Saturday, what happens beyond that, what happens up to that last game of the season. The demands that will be made from me to the players is that we go out and we actively try and win 3 points in the remaining 8 games that we have between now and the end of the season. That message won't change. I think if you start to feel comfortable, I think if you start to feel that you can let your hair down and let your standards drop, then that's exactly the product that you'll get out of it. So this is a bit where I go dead serious. I genuinely mean it. That's the demands that will be put from me to the players right up to the very last whistle at the end of the season, come what may.
Striker Kevin Van Veen notched his 20th of the season at the weekend. He joins in a weak club of just 7 players who have managed to reach that tally in a single season within the last 60 years, and he set his own target after the game, saying he'd like to get another 10 and reach 30 by the end of the season. His manager Stuart Kettlewell is delighted with the confidence that the player has and hopes that many other in his side will follow suit.
but I love the fact that he's pitched out there that he would like to try and break records, and he feels that he can get in and about that. Come what may, he's had a good season personally, but I do know that he's got a burning desire to go and see if he can try and push boundaries with those numbers as well. And when you see the form that he's in, if we can get service to him, we can get balls into him in certain areas, then I wouldn't argue against it.
I think Kevin Van Veen he's definitely got to be nominated, scoring 20 goals for Motherwell.
Yeah, I think he'll be nominated by the players. I think the players see, a rival that comes to them and hurts them and scores goals against them. He's certainly somebody that's done that. Most of the teams he's played against this season, and big player for Motherwell. Yeah, I think he'll get lots of votes.
Yeah, you get it for you. I mean, who gets it for you in that four?
I'm not sure. I've not had time to think about it, but I definitely think he would be a contender for it. I definitely think.
I'll give you four and see if you agree with them.
Okay.
Kyogo,
yes.
Hatate,
yes.
Maybe Van Veen, Shankland, and maybe Callum McGregor. There's 5.
Yeah, I think you could argue the merits for all of them.
You could, couldn't you?
I think you could certainly argue the merits for all of them. I think all of them have been pivotal to the success that Celtic have. I think what you'd say about Hatate this season is that he's been notable when he's not been there. I think Celtic have felt his absence when he's been injured of late.
Yeah.
Kyogo, I think his goals have been fantastic. Callum McGregor, I think, slips under the radar at times because he's so consistent.
You can give us your view on that, because the players will be asked to vote, and I think most of them will be coming in very shortly over the next week or so to finalise it all. So that's an interesting one. Who's your player of the year? Who's your manager of the year as well? Give us your thoughts on that too. As far as some people who are looking at some of the performances, certainly Livingston's David Martindale and what they're achieving on their budget has certainly raised a few eyebrows this season. David Martindale reckons it's going to be a 3-horse race for that big battle to get in the top 6. Livingston, he reckons, are in there. Hibs and St Mirren. Did we send? Let's check. Is Kerry out at Livingston?
David Martindale's side will take on Motherwell this weekend in the hopes of edging themselves closer to a place in the top 6. In what was once considered a 2-horse race between Livingston and St Mirren, the Livy boss now believes that Hibernian are also in with a chance of a top place finish. But he's also aware that there might be others lurking in the background.
I'll be honest, I've not really looked too far ahead in that one in terms of what's below us. I don't know. Motherwell were to win on Saturday. Have they got an outside chance? I don't know how the league's sitting there, but probably, you asked me 2-3 games ago, I'd probably said ourselves in St Mirren. We're trying to get 6th place, so you're 1 place for 2. I think now you're 2 places from 3 in terms of St Mirren, Hibs and Livingston, but I don't know where Motherwell in that equation, because Stuart's went and picked some points up, so they'll not be a million miles away, I wouldn't imagine.
After missing out on a place in the top 6 last season after a late equaliser to Motherwell, the Livy boss says if history was to repeat itself, they wouldn't be pointing the finger at anyone else.
Be antagonising, but again, we'd only have ourselves to blame. We've got no divine right to finish in the top 6, and I take huge responsibility for that. I sit here as a manager when we're on a winning streak and in the top 6, and I take all the credit, so I'm more than capable of taking my share of responsibility for that also. It's difficult, games have changed, the dynamics within games are changing, going into the last maybe 6, 7, 8 games of the season. The style of play is changing from most teams out with the Old Firm. It's became a wee bit more risk averse, which makes it a wee bit more difficult to score, which then makes it a wee bit teams are putting a wee bit more pressure on you. It's became a wee bit more direct because the footballs came a wee bit more risk averse. The teams trying to secure Premiership football are pushing on for top 6.
Only 3 games remain before the split, but who will cross that finish line first? Livingston take on Motherwell this weekend at Fir Park.
Will Livingston be in the top 6, Rafi?
I think they're losing it a wee bit. It's Hearts hard as well. I think when you lose it, it's difficult to get it back again. I don't think the 3 games they've got are particularly different. I think they're staying away from the big boys, aren't they? They've got some of the teams round about them.
Yeah, their 3 games are against Motherwell, St Johnstone and Dundee United. Yeah,
so they're 3 games they'll be looking at, and they'll be going, look, we'll beat them before, but we just need to get back to where we were, and certain players just aren't producing just now. But it's amazing what a win can do, particularly with the 3 games.
Yeah, a lot of people look and say, okay, they've had a couple of results that maybe they're not happy with. The Ross County one was a big one for them. But it doesn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day, I think if they finish mid-table, if they get top 6, on his budget, he's embarrassed a few managers along the way.
Oh, without a doubt. The one thing that you would say is that top 6 really does have a massive impact then on the budget for going and bringing in players over the summer. So I think he'll be desperate to get it for the difference that might mean. It's the difference between a player or not, possibly. But I would agree with you. I think they've punched considerably above their weight.
Okay, as ever, we try and react to every story that we discuss and get your thoughts on it as well. And more often than not, when we are on the programme, we try and offer a balance. We'll certainly offer you an opinion, some you like, some you don't. But we try and offer a balance on certain issues and how they will unfold and what the different permutations are in certain stories that break. That one that we were talking about at the top of the show, Ruffy, Sky Sports have discussed the matter internally and provided the SFA assurances with regard to permitted use of the VAR audio. Andy Walker has also admitted his regret over his comments and how they've been reported by the podcast company who invited him to their show. And they go on to say, we apologise to our colleagues at the Scottish FA with whom we have a strong relationship and look forward to continuing to provide exclusive live coverage of the Scottish Premiership. That's a statement from Sky. Exactly as I suggested to all of you over the course of this story.
Yeah, there's been a few knuckles wrapped.
That's the way it works. You know, I mean, it's all right saying he's a whistleblower, the content of what he's mentioned, but there are repercussions because of what's in place. There were 2 or 3 other areas of that story, Ruffy, I looked at and I thought, this is some people will look at it as a betrayal of trust. We look at it as, by the way, there's a serious issue which Andy Walker has highlighted, but there's also an agreement in place which an organisation is using to help a broadcaster, and there's your fallout from it.
Yeah, it seems the sensible outcome. They've all spoken. I think Andy would have had probably his knuckles wrapped about it, because it's a lot of money we're talking about here, the contracts that the sports people have, and you have to have some kind of relationship with the SFA or the people that you're signing these contracts with, and it looks as if it's been breached very lightly. So it's been cleared up, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, I know exactly where you're going.
Just going up to Sky, and you can hear them up there going.
Yeah. Well, listen. These are situations that develop that suddenly the repercussions. I'm sure that story will still have a bit to go. St Johnstone against Ross County has a bit to go, because Ross County are desperately trying to get wins from somewhere. St Johnstone are sitting 9th. They're 8 points above County going into this one, and Callum Davidson reckons 2 wins should keep them well away from the bottom 2.
Just looking to win as many games as I can. I think that's the biggest thing. It's hard when you say points though. I think you look at a couple of wins. 2 wins takes you up to 38 points. Now that gets you, I don't think any team's been in the bottom 2 with that, so we look a couple of wins, but again I would like more than that, so just try and win every game we go and play.
Oh, what a big game that is. County desperately looking to win it. St Johnstone, they've got a wee cushion. I think they've got enough of a cushion, Ruffy. Yeah,
I think they've got enough as well. If they can keep 11 men on the park, it'd make it a lot easier. Ross County, for a wee while, they were getting wee points here and there, and it was beginning to keep them in touch with everybody, but it's the wins they need now, and going there, I think they'll be struggling to get a win there. If they got a point there, it might be something to build on, but not enough if other teams are picking up 3 points.
Yeah, and Dundee United, let's not forget, have got Hibs on the Sunday as well. So you're suddenly looking, you're saying to yourself, where are the points coming from? And Kilmarnock as well, Ali, are desperately hoping that they can get a run of points before they hit the split, and they're all starting to basically cut each other's throats.
Yeah, I think it was a huge win for Kilmarnock on Saturday. I think they needed that, but whether they can sustain it going up to Pittodrie against a very in-form Aberdeen team who have refound a bit of form, a bit of confidence, a bit of belief under Barry Robson, I can't see Kilmarnock taking anything. Their away form has been notoriously poor this season.
Aberdeen, Celtic, and then away to St Mirren.
Yeah, it's a big run of games for them. I think for me, Dundee United and Kilmarnock will be fighting it out at the bottom.
Yeah, I tend to share that view. Even although way back at the start, Ruffy, I thought St Johnstone were in dire need of signings, and he was able to get them in, and obviously get a few people back from injury. I think that has proved enough of a cushion for him. I just feel, and I just wonder, it's going to be really tight. I just wonder, it's about goal scorers. It's a Kyle Vassell. It's a Eamon Brophy. It's, Dundee United. Is it a Fletcher? That's who you're relying on, Ruffy.
Yeah, and that's what the managers were relying on. They're the guys who win you the games, and it's going to be really, really cutthroat as we go on. It's even going to be worse when we come to the split, because every manager will say, right, we're in it now, but we can take points off of the people that we're coming up against now. We're not going to be against the top 6, so I think you would need at least a 7 or 8 point cushion when you get into that split to say you're confident.
Yeah, Kelly and Dundee United, is that the same for you?
Yeah, I'm still Kelly. I'm beginning to worry a wee bit about Ross County now, because they're not winning games. So I think after this weekend we'll get a better idea. Yeah,
just phoning Jan the Staggy up there at Dingwall. Yeah, Ruffy's worrying about you lot now. Yeah, you're safe. Jan prefers it when you absolutely annihilate Ross County, because that means that they can go on a big run. Anyway, give us your thoughts on the Scottish Premiership and how you think the big games are going to go this weekend. 4 o'clock, we'll have the half times, full times as well. Alison will be out at games for us, and our reporters, Kerry, will be there at Celtic Park getting all the reaction in the programme at 4. And if you want the other previews, as well as Tam McManus and myself and Ruffy on tomorrow, Kerry will be with Tam and Ruffy on Saturday morning. Lots of content out on the programme. You can sample Joe Miller and Charlie Adam head to head, talking to each other about the big game on Saturday and how they think it will go. We're trying to give you as much content as we possibly can, and competitions as well. So lots to look forward to. Of course, down south, if you do indeed get a manager's job, there's no point in looking at the fine print on it. Even if it's a 5-year deal, you can still get bulleted after 7 or 8 games. And the great thing about English football is there seems to be this lovely little merry-go-round where everybody goes, right, we know we sacked you, but we'll take you back at Chelsea now because you're a legend. And Frank Lampard is there.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming, I'd have to say. I was stunned when I saw that one coming out yesterday. I think obviously just go in until the end of the season and see where it goes. He'll have an eye on getting that again permanently. Of that I'd have no doubt. But yeah, I would agree with you. It seems to be this very small pool where you just regurgitate managers, share managers. I see Graham Potter was linked almost immediately with Leicester after he was sacked at Martin O'Neill, making also in amongst the running for Leicester. But I was surprised when I saw Frank Lampard's name back in.
And last night, Ruffy, I sat down and I sat there and I thought to myself, now come on West Ham, you're at home, the place is absolutely mobbed, the bubbles are flying, can you do something? And if you're a manager, I was watching David Moyes and I'm thinking to myself, wow, if you're under pressure because your back line is murder, your goalkeeper is a disaster, and they didn't just give them 1 goal, they gave them 5 goals. West Ham handed Newcastle 5 goals.
Yeah, and it's been happening all year. They've been like that. They've scraped the odd 1-0 that's kept Davy in a job, and obviously this weekend is a massive one as well, because we're at the stage now, it's 1 defeat away from the guillotine coming, and I think he'll know that himself, that he's got to get a win. They're only 3 points away if you jump them 4 or 5 places, so, but you've got to get that win, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's cutthroat though, isn't it? I mean, the good thing about it, if you've got a sensible board at West Ham who look at what he's done before to save them, look at what he achieved last season, he surely gets some credit in the bank, because they could go on and win the Europa Conference League.
Yeah, I don't know how much credit in the bank realistically. In the eyes of you and I, yes. In the eyes of the people that hire and fire, I don't know. Yeah,
absolutely. You're absolutely right. I don't know if you saw it last night, Ruffy, but we think we've got problems. Feyenoord against Ajax, stopped twice. Chaotic scenes, to be honest with you. And missiles being thrown, and I think that they were taken off because smoke bombs were set off in the place as well. I think this is becoming a recurring theme. Somebody is seriously going to get injured. One of the players had his head split open when a missile was thrown. The smoke bombs, the flares, it's an accident, a really serious one waiting to happen somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think officials and are trying to do their best, you know, but it's a security for me how they get in, you know, and I know there are ways and means of getting in, but I think I remember when we had the Euros here, there was lines and lines of security. You had to go through about 3 different bits to get into the stadium. I think we're not far away from that now. So I think if you're going to start going to games, you better go to games extra early, because I think you're going to get searched a lot more severe, because it's got to stop, because particularly, you know, here as well, I think the ex-SFA, the boy that was looking after that, he was saying, as you were saying, when we're just going to wait till somebody gets seriously injured.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another game last night that caught my attention, and it tells me that I can't see anyone stopping Real Madrid winning the Champions League. They go to the Nou Camp and batter Barcelona, and Benzema was just outrageous.
Yeah, I think they look like a shoe-in for it now. I think they'd be everyone's favourites. I think they've just hit a particular bit of form just at the right time this season. I think I'm not sure that anyone's living with them.
Yeah, they're looking unstoppable.
Did you catch that game in Brazil last night with the other 3 you watched?
It did sound. No, just about to say, it did sound as if I was watching football all night. I actually wasn't. I don't know if you do this. There's little highlights that you can catch on your. You know, I can't watch them all, and plus, of course, you know, there's only so many brownie points you get away with. But I did, you know. Because my family were out, I thought, great, I can sit down and watch West Ham and not feel guilty and hope that Davy Moyes gets a result. When they come back in, boom, you know, we're on to the West Wing. Nevertheless, I did actually see them on the phone, Ruffy, and watch Benzema at his absolute best. What about the competition as I quickly try and get out of this? It's another magnificent competition courtesy of PLZ Soccer. This is your chance to win this fantastic framed and signed print of Brian Laudrup scoring for Rangers in that unforgettable game up at Tannadice. That goal secured Rangers 9 in a row, and for your chance to win, all you have to do is make sure you subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel and answer this simple question: from which club did Rangers sign Brian Laudrup? If you know the answer, pop it in the comments section below, and make sure you subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. Good luck. I can still see the ball coming over. I think he actually outjumped Brian Welsh, Brian Laudrup, and headed that ball into the net for that goal up at Tannadice for the 9 in a row for Rangers. But it's signed by him as well, and it's in a frame because of Bonzo here. It was easier to roll up into a tube, Alison, to be honest with you. What about the question? You thought near Beaton for the question, which was, who was the last player to be sent off in an Old Firm game, Ruffy?
I'm going to take a stab at Alan Thompson.
This is not a bad idea, Ruffy, but it was actually not that long ago, because well, Alan Thompson was always getting sent off in games like that.
Played for the last 15 years.
I know that, but it's Ruffy, for God's sake, by the way. Ruffy's just found out the Beatles have split up. Callum McGregor, the 2nd of May 2021, in the 4-1 game for Rangers. Rangers won at 4-1. There was no fans in the ground. It was Ibrox. And it was that, do you remember? He was sent off after 26 minutes. He had 2 fouls. So Callum McGregor was the answer. Did you get that? If you did, congratulations to you. If you didn't, don't worry, there'll be another question tomorrow. Let's hope there's nobody getting sent off. Let's hope nobody is talking about the referees, although I have a sneaky suspicion, because we're down to the business end, Ruffy. I think we are in for a feisty week ahead after this Celtic Rangers game.
Yeah, I'd just love to know the dialogue of the Celtic Rangers game if they have to go upstairs and start talking about something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think?
Do you want to offer your apology now, or will you just type it out and put it on, just in case you have to say something? Listen, there, but for the grace of God. Thank you to everyone who put out their opinions on the live feed here. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you download the app, you'll get all the breaking football news. There is so much content that we're putting out there, trying to give you the best football coverage in Scotland and beyond here on PLZ Soccer. I do hope you enjoy it. I do hope you subscribe to our channel. From Ruffy, Alison and myself, Peter Martin, thank you for watching.